Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 372 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where I was very troubled at that time.
Well, who's hindering all your plans? Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm Sara, the Shieldmaiden of Rohan, and I'm here with the man of the West who is not preparing for a great war, Alan Sisto.
I can barely prepare for a podcast, Sara. Folks, join us as we continue our sidebar from Appendix A III on the Dwarves by taking a fresh look at the events leading up to the story of the Hobbit, this time from Gandalf's perspective, as we turn to Unfinished Tales and the Quest of Erebor.
Ooh, good thing I just bumped into you in the pub so we could discuss this dangerous matter.
Chance meeting.
Right, if chance you call it. Folks, no matter how you arrived, you are all welcome here in the common room. At the Prancing Pony podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Middle-earth with plenty of speculation and some seriously bad jokes along the way.
Says you. All right, we do love our deep dives into the lore, discussing our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
But we do try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of friends chatting at the pub, making plans to get rid of dragons, and we're glad you've joined us.
Indeed we are. I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to check in with one of our guests in the North Wing. Today, we're bringing you another new installment of The North Wing.
Barlam and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn made special for hobbits. And this is our place made special for some of our listeners, to give us a chance to get to know them.
Now, rooms at the North Wing are a little hard to come by, so only our patrons at the Elrond's Honorarium and Círdan's contribution tiers are eligible. So if you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod.
Please do. We've got a waiting list for the North Wing right now, but we'll get to them all soon, and we'll make room for more if necessary.
Absolutely. Well then, Matt, why don't we welcome today's guest to the North Wing, Ben Hinckley.
Hi.
Hi, Ben. Good to have you.
Great to be here.
Now, Ben, tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, what do you do, and what do your loved ones think of all this crazy Tolkien stuff?
I grew up in New England. I came out to Minnesota, have lived here basically ever since. I am an accountant, so the less said about that, the better. My family is pretty supportive, particularly my son. My son loves Tolkien. It's something we've been sharing basically his whole life. My wife puts up with it and is generally supportive because of that bond.
Exactly. Well, that's good. Ben, you've been around long enough to know that we're going to ask you the question that we ask everybody who ever comes on the Prancing Pony podcast. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like? And I love this question. Why do you keep coming back?
Well, okay. So my very first exposure didn't really take. When I was about 5, my father took me to a play that his community theater put on of The Hobbit. And about all I remember is the scene where Smaug first comes out, and it was they had fancy lights and a smoke machine, so that left an impression. But
on a 5-year-old, it certainly would, yeah. But
what really got me into Tolkien was when I was 10. I moved to a old stone house in Vermont that we were renting from a family in Montreal. And they had left behind all of their books, and that included a ton of Tolkien. Some, I don't know if they're first editions, but really, really old beat-up ones, including a version of The Hobbit with the Tolkien illustration of Smaug. And I picked that up, and I didn't put it down until about 4 a.m. on a day before school.
Oh, that's great. On a school night, reading The Hobbit in one sitting. That's fantastic.
And as far as what keeps bringing me back, it's just so deep. I mean, there's so many aspects. Like, you've got the brave warrior story on the surface, but you start digging into the history and like what the meaning of heroism and all of this, that there's just so much to be found there, and it's so much that's applicable in everyday life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Depth and applicability for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, following up on that, what is your favorite book in the Legendarium, and do you have a favorite non-Legendarium?
Okay, my favorite book in the Legendarium is probably Book 4 of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, very specific. I like it.
just because of, okay, you get Faramir, you get the humanization or hobbitization of Gollum, the choices of Samwise. There's just so much going on, so much that's at the heart of the thematic heart of the novel.
And what about non-legendarium? Do you have any favorites there?
Farmer Giles of Ham.
Such a funny story. Yeah.
It's fun to read out loud, just the way he plays with language.
Especially the way the dragon speaks.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. All right. Well, favorite memory of a Tolkien-related activity. It could still be the community theater production of The Hobbit when you were 5, but maybe you have a different one. What's your favorite memory?
Well, okay, that's probably the favorite specific memory, but favorite overall memory is reading it out loud to my son at bedtime, reading Lord of the Rings over the course of, I don't know, 9 months or something.
Mm-hmm. How old was he when you started?
I want to say 7.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And we read the whole thing, including the prologues. And
did you? Right on.
Concerning hobbits.
That's such a sort of a slow start, notoriously, for the Lord of the Rings, that for a 7-year-old, I'm really impressed that he was sticking through it. I think my son was 6 and I started with The Hobbit, and even that didn't move fast enough for him sometimes. Good stuff.
Well, he's a pretty patient kid, so.
Good. Well, sounds like a really good connection between the two of you over that. I love that. That's a neat thing to hear.
And now we're going to move on to the lightning round of quick questions and answers. And I'm going to start off. Who's your favorite character in The Lord of the Rings?
I guess I'd have to go with Sam. No, I'm lying. Gandalf. It's definitely Gandalf. It's always Gandalf.
That's fair. A nice way, though, to get your second choice in there, just in case. I like that. What's the one place in Middle Earth you wish you could visit?
Nen Hithoil in Environs.
Ooh, fascinating choice. Nobody has named that one yet. That's a new one. I like that.
You get the Argonath, you get Amon La, Amon Hen.
Yeah, Parthgalen. Yeah.
Just the North Stair. There's so much to see and do.
There is.
Who is your favorite elf from the First Age?
Okay, so I'm going to go about this from a storytelling standpoint and say Feanor. Not because I approve of his actions or anything. I don't. But he sets everything in motion. He's where the entire story of the Legendarium comes from.
Everything pivots from Feanor's actions. That's true. Yeah. It was really hard not to push the stop button and just say, thank you, everybody. We are done.
We're done here.
I half expected it.
Do you consider yourself a Merry or a Pippin?
Definitely a Merry. I would have spent my entire time in the map room, and we all know Pippin did not.
Merry spent his time much, more wisely. That is correct. Yes.
Favorite author or book other than Tolkien?
These days, it's Stephen King.
Okay.
Not
a bad call. All right. And one last one. Your favorite poem or song in the Legendarium?
Throne Goes Everond.
Wow. That seems to be a popular one lately.
That's 2 in a row that we've gotten that answer.
And I think 3 out of 5, if I remember my North Wings correctly. But yeah, not a bad call. I mean, just because it's chosen, frequently doesn't make it a bad call at all. It's quite a good one. I love the evolution of the road poems. Mm-hmm. But now I'm getting out of the spirit of the lightning round. Those were some great answers. So thank you, Benjamin. We really enjoyed having you here in the North Wing.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, it's time for us all to head back over to the common room and join the rest of the listeners.
Thanks again, and we'll see you back at our next Questions After Nightfall, if not sooner.
And now we return you to the podcast in progress.
Right, Alan. Well, I can't wait to get into the Quest of Erebor. So do you want to take it off for us and make a start on our readings?
I will. I'm going to go ahead and skip the first paragraph and lead in with Christopher's final bit before we get into the text. I have not found any writing preceding the opening words of the present text. He would say no more that day. The he of the opening sentence is Gandalf. We are Frodo, Peregrine, Meriadoc, and Gimli. And I is Frodo, the recorder of the conversation. The scene is a house in Minas Tirith after the coronation of King Elessar. And now I'm feeling like it's the script of a play. Scene, Minas Tirith, Gimli sitting smoking a pipe,
and eating meat off the bone or something.
Exactly. Back to the text. He would say no more that day, But later, we brought the matter up again, and he told us the whole strange story, how he came to arrange the journey to Erebor, why he thought of Bilbo, and how he persuaded the proud Thorin Oakenshield to take him into his company. I cannot remember all the tale now, but we gathered that to begin with, Gandalf was thinking only of the defense of the West against the Shadow.
I was very troubled at that time, he said, for Saruman was hindering all my plans. I knew that Sauron had arisen again and would soon declare himself, and I knew that he was preparing for a great war. How would he begin? Would he try first to reoccupy Mordor, or would he first attack the chief strongholds of his enemies? I thought then, and I am sure now, that to attack Lorien and Rivendell as soon as he was strong enough was his original plan. Would have been a much better plan for him, and much worse for us. You may think that Rivendell was out of his reach, but I did not think so. The state of things in the north was very bad. The kingdom under the mountain and the strong men of Dale were no more. To resist any force that Sauron might send to regain the northern passes in the mountains and the old lands of Angmar, there were only the dwarves of the Iron Hills, and behind them lay a desolation and a dragon. The dragon Sauron might use with terrible effect. Often I said to myself, I must find some means of dealing with Smaug, but a direct stroke against Dol Guldur is needed still more. We must disturb Sauron's plans. I must make the council see that. Those were my dark thoughts as I jogged along the road. I was tired, and I was going to the Shire for a short rest, after being away from it for more than 20 years. I thought that if I put them out of my mind for a while, I might perhaps find some way of dealing with these troubles. And so I did indeed, though I was not allowed to put them out of my mind. But just as I was nearing Bree, I was overtaken by Thorin Oakenshield, who lived then in exile beyond the northwestern borders of the Shire. To my surprise, he spoke to me, and it was at that moment that the tide began to turn.
Marvellous. I did have this brief flashing visual of Gandalf in sports shorts and a tank top jogging along the road, though.
And Thorin jogging faster.
Yes.
On your left.
Oh, good reference. Anyway, we'll try and move past that visual.
It's a great visual. No, I love it.
It is a bit, isn't
we'll
it?
We'll dwell there, yeah.
Now, a couple of weeks back when we were covering Durin's folk, we came across the line, the story is told elsewhere of what came of that meeting. The meeting of Gandalf and Thorin and Bree, that is. And I think we said that the elsewhere is the Hobbit, but that elsewhere is also right here in Unfinished Tales, the Quest of Erebor.
That's right. But as today and next week will show, there were actually several versions of this story and a lot of development along the way.
The version we're reading today, the first one presented in the Quest for Erebor chapter, is a version Christopher Tolkien calls Manuscript C. And he explains that it, quote, tells the story in a more economical and tightly constructed form.
Which, of course, has nothing to do with the Prancing Pony podcast. We tell nothing in an economical or tightly constructed form.
Well, that just sounds miserably boring.
I know, doesn't it? Like, thanks, Christopher. Today, though, we are going to focus on that main story as presented in Unfinished Tales. Next week, we'll look at the appendix in Unfinished Tales, where we will look at the differences in the earlier versions, which are A and B, according to Christopher Tolkien. And then both weeks, we'll do what we can to pull in things from the Peoples of Middle-earth, where Christopher Tolkien brings even more detail to the table.
But the first part of this story in Unfinished Tales, the part we skipped when reading, is essentially a synopsis of what we covered over the 2 weeks we talked about Durin's folk, which is exactly why we skipped it, right?
That is correct.
So economical and tightly constructed in form.
Oh, there you go. I mean, I do try to, make it somewhat palatable. So we get Christopher acknowledging the more than one version of this story. And this is funny because he says that here, but Unfinished Tales was published in 1980. And it was 16 years later when Peoples of Middle-earth was published. And that's where he finds even more texts. So here he's already saying there's more than one version. And he'll find later on that there's more than one. Yeah.
Indeed. And that's what we'll reference as we go through the versions in Unfinished Tales. But starting where I picked up, Christopher Tolkien, here at least, says he hasn't found any of his father's writings that start earlier than the story as here presented.
Yeah. And then, of course, he kindly helps us out by giving us the antecedents for the pronouns, right? He is Gandalf. We are the hobbits minus Sam, but also Gimli. And it's Frodo writing it down, so he's the I here.
Yeah, and we're also given the location and the timing. They're in the house in Minas Tirith where they're all staying after Aragorn's coronation, getting over their hangovers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was quite a party, I'm sure. Yeah,
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. Now, in Peoples of Middle-earth, we get a tiny bit more. The morning after their meeting, that is the meeting between Gandalf and Thorin, we're told that Gandalf tells Thorin, he's thought about it, and I'm going to go with you to your home to talk more.
And then we read, from this meeting there came many events of great moment in the matter of the War of the Ring. Indeed, it led to the finding of the ring and to the involvement of the Shire folk and the means whereby the ring was at last destroyed. Wherefore many have supposed that all this Mithrandir purposed and foresaw. But we believe that is not so. For Frodo wrote this passage in the first copy of the Red Book, which because of its length was not included in the tale of the war. Those were glad days when after the crowning we dwelt in the fair house in Minas Tirith with Gandalf.
So that helps with the setting, but as you're reading that, I realize a little more is clicking with me. Once again, we get sort of this meta-narrative or frame narrative, I should say. We wrote this, but it was too much to include in the book. So we ended up including part of it in the appendix, but the rest got shuffled off and dropped altogether. As we'll learn next week, Tolkien actually intended this part of the story, the Quest of Erebor, to be part of Appendix A3 with Durin's folk.
Right. And this is yet another chunk of text that he's had to make a decision to excise from the main part of the story itself, like the tale of Aragorn and Arwen, of course.
Right.
Yeah, but I love the fact that he wraps it in this meta-narrative. That it's the hobbits making the decision when actually, of course, it's Tolkien.
It wasn't included in the tale of the war. Not because of Frodo, not because of anybody else but you, Professor. Anyway. So now maybe to the publisher, because the publisher's like, no, it's already long enough.
Yeah.
You got to
too much paper already.
Yeah, very expensive book. So now to the story itself. Gandalf says he's not going to say any more that day. What he actually did say, though, he wouldn't tell us anymore. Well, what did he tell you in the first place? I don't know. Neither do you, neither do any of us. Because what he did say is actually a total mystery. It's not listed here or anywhere else. Fortunately, though, he's not quiet about it forever, or we would be already heading into the mailbag. No, he eventually told them the whole strange story, them being Frodo, Merry, Pippin, and Gimli.
Yep. Now, interestingly, Frodo is writing this down much later, late enough that he cannot remember all the tale anymore and can only provide what we get here, which is a fabulous get-out-of-jail-free clause. Isn't it?
Exactly. Well, I forgot to include that because Frodo forgot. So
yes.
Talk about leaving the door open. At the same time, Frodo really does remember a lot of detail if he's just writing this down like off the top of his head. He's got Gandalf quoting other people throughout this story.
Kudos to his memory.
It really is pretty impressive. But he does recall, Frodo that is, thinking that Gandalf's motivation, at least his initial motivation in all this, was the big picture, defending the West against Sauron. And we will be coming back to that big picture a lot.
Yep, now we get a reporting of Gandalf's own words, telling the story of how this all came to happen. And Gandalf admits that he's troubled because of Saruman blocking his plans.
That's right. Now, remember, we still don't know that he's evil at this point, or Gandalf doesn't know that he's evil. The quest for Erebor began in Third Age 2941. With that in mind, go back 90 years to 2851. That was when the White Council met. Gandalf was able to confirm that it was Sauron and Dol Guldur. Remember, he had gone there, and that's where he ended up getting the map and key from Thrain. And he wanted to attack, and that 90 years ago, Saruman convinced the council not to.
Right. And, you were just saying there that we don't know at this point, or Gandalf does not know at this point that Saruman is evil. So you've got to wonder, how is he responding to Saruman? Is it a bit like, when you've got this micromanager above you who just won't let you get on with what you need to get on with?
Gandalf, I'm going to need to have a TPS in triplicate. Going to need to file, where's your TPS report? Yeah.
But a frustrated Gandalf, who definitely must be frustrated with Saruman at this point, he knew A, it was Sauron in Dol Guldur growing in strength, and B, he was preparing for all-out war.
Of course, it's Sauron. What else? He's going to do that. That's what he does.
Sauron's not learning how to crochet while sitting there.
He doesn't do anything halfway. Yeah. Learning. And now I'm picturing Sauron crocheting.
Hey,
good job.
That's good a great picture. Yeah. But what Gandalf didn't know was how that would start. Right? Is Sauron going to try to go to Mordor first, or is he going to attack his foes directly?
Mm-hmm. Of course, Gandalf eventually says he's convinced that Sauron's going to start by attacking the two elven realms, Lorien and Rivendell. Now, I want to ask you this, Sara. Without the One Ring, because of course Sauron hasn't had it now for a long time, Sauron would not know for sure who is holding the three. But do you think he had an inkling or some sort of knowledge that these realms were protected by two holders of the three?
Well, I suppose what I would think is that if Sauron is, crouching in Dol Guldur, having cast aside his knitting for the day, and he's trying to, use his mind to push into Rivendell or into Lothlorien. Remember, Galadriel speaks about how she rejects Sauron and she keeps him out, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to know that his mind is not being permitted entrance at all into those realms, which is going to tell him, I think, that something is going on there, something powerful that he can't push through.
You're right. I mean, in fact, as you said that, I remembered, even though I'm asking that question, we sort of get an answer to an extent from Galadriel herself in the chapter, The Mirror of Galadriel. We've had that moment there where Frodo, offers her the ring and everything. And she's acknowledged that this is Nenya, the Ring of Adamant. I am its keeper. And then we read, he suspects, but he does not know, not yet. So, okay, he doesn't know. But like you said, there's a difference between knowing with certainty and having a pretty strong suspicion. And just the mere fact that he is unable to penetrate that with his power is enough to tell him there's something going on.
I would say so. Yes.
Yeah.
That
So
would
it's
be my
suspicion.
thinking anyway. And, as always, I'm happy to be corrected on something this.
I don't know that there's a firm answer. I mean,
No.
So little is told of like Sauron's own perspective,
Right.
Like what is he thinking at this point? Anyway, it's just interesting stuff. I mean, Rivendell. And if that's the case, if I'm Sauron, I'm wondering where are the three, because I need to go after those first, since the one may never be found, I'm going to keep looking for it. But in the meantime, take out the three. Okay. Clearly, there are two very powerful elven realms. Then there's the pathetic little piddly Thranduil here in Mirkwood that I allow to survive, suffer at my convenience. So Lorien and Rivendell come to mind. Who's got the third? Where is the third? He's far enough away from the Grey Havens geographically that maybe his hunch is the Grey Havens. And he wouldn't have been wrong in a sense, since Círdan was the one who did hold it, but Third Age 1000, that ring was handed off to, or thereabouts, was handed off to Gandalf.
Right.
Interesting.
It is interesting. And you're right. He would have been wanting to find the three because it's all about regaining this power that has been slipping through his fingers.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why he wanted the last of the seven from Thrain. I mean,
exactly.
Again, he's got to gather this power back. Yeah.
Yeah. But, however we view that, Gandalf acknowledges that attacking Lorien and Rivendell would have been the better plan. But why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was thinking that too. Gandalf makes it sound sort of like that's the obvious. Well, it would have been a better decision for him and a bad decision for us. I suppose because neither of those realms really rely on powerful physical defense. This isn't Minas Tirith with walls and, all of that. Rivendell relies on its secrecy in many ways. Lorien on magic and on really skilled archers. But, quantity has a quality all of its own. And if he were to send a large invading force, that could be problematic. Now we find out later at the end of the War of the Ring, they try 3 times and fail.
Yes.
Quite possibly under the leadership of Camul the Easterling, who was the second in command of the Witch King and was in charge of Dol Guldur. We don't know that, but it seems likely. I don't know. I mean, to me, but this is how I play strategy games, I would want to go back to Mordor first, build up a base. Exactly. And get my power back and then come and attack. I don't know. I guess maybe just a timing thing that Lorien and Rivendell are in no way prepared for an assault because they don't know that it's Sauron.
No, but an assault with
now.
what? Sauron hasn't at this point.
Yeah, he doesn't have the huge armies of orcs and
No.
other peoples. I don't know.
But I suppose he would have the advantage of greater surprise, because once he goes back and rebuilds Barad-dûr and all that kind of thing, then it becomes fairly obvious. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Sauron's back. Okay, then time to beef up the security. But I suppose what Gandalf is thinking is that if he just went straight for Lothlorien, that he could have the advantage of surprise. Although, I'm not sure Galadriel would be a pushover.
And now I'm just picturing the Inquisition from Monty Python. Nobody expects Sauron. Our chief weapon is surprise. Surprise and fear. Fear and surprise. Oh, man.
Monty Python is never wrong in whatever
I
context.
know. It's like every episode in season 2 was named after a Monty Python quote, just about, I think, except for our Beorn chapter. And it's like, we still could have done that. There's just so much.
I'm sure you could have found something.
Oh, man. So Gandalf then walks through his thinking, first about Rivendell, because, okay, Lorien's close to Dol Guldur. There's a geographic proximity that makes that a location under threat. But Rivendell, he's trying to explain that's not out of Sauron's reach or ability, even at this point when he doesn't have all of his power.
Yeah, because the North's in a bit of a rough spot at this point. Erebor is gone. Dale is gone. There's not a lot of folks left to stand against an attack from Sauron up to the northern passes and into Angmar. And just the dwarves in the Iron Hills, but they've got a dragon to their rear, which could be a bit of a... Nobody wants a dragon to their rear.
Well, no, that's true. Nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody does. And that dragon is a problem, Gandalf says. In fact, Gandalf says he was saying that to himself often. I often said to myself, "Self, you're the wisest person in the room. What do you think about this Smaug creature?" It is critical to deal with Smaug. We get that famous line we all think about the dragon Sauron might use to terrible effect. But as important as it is to deal with Smaug, that's secondary to getting Sauron out of Dol Guldur. I mean, the whole problem of Smaug is that Sauron could use Smaug in his attempt to take back those passes to Angmar. But if Sauron's driven out of Dol Guldur, he's not even going to try that. So instead of stopping this secondary thing, let's stop the primary thing. Driving Sauron out is the most important. So he's got to take that to the council.
Yeah, because I suppose that once you've driven Sauron out of Dol Guldur, there's only one place for Sauron really to go, and that's all the way back to Mordor.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, he could go further east. He could go into Rhûn, I suppose. But again, that's fine. I mean, go somewhere. Right? Go elsewhere. Just don't go here.
Yeah, because it's just a bit too close for comfort, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Dol Guldur's right there. I mean, across the river.
Yeah. So Gandalf wraps up his thoughts, telling the gathered hobbits and Gimli that he was thinking about all of these things as he jogged along the road towards the Shire. And we're back to the jogging.
We really are. I mean, I'm trying to imagine, first of all, I'm just trying to imagine Gandalf jogging. I mean, does he use a Fitbit? Is he carrying a water bottle? Was he trying to break the 3-hour mark in the marathon? I mean, what is he doing? I can't see him jogging, let alone Thorin overtaking him. That's not much of a pace if a dwarf is overtaking you.
Well, yes. I mean, maybe he's wearing a decent pair of Nikes and he's just doing it. Who knows?
Oh, wow. Maybe he's on horseback.
Now that's cheating.
That is cheating, isn't it? Yeah.
But considering he's doing all this jogging, the Shire does seem like a good place to take a break. And he hadn't been there in more than 20 years after all. That's
right. It was 2920, which is 21 years in the past at this point, when the old Took had passed away. And that was the last time that Gandalf had been to the Shire. And he thinks, as I think a lot of us often do, I know I always think this, taking a break is going to help his mind find the answer. If I've got a hard problem to face, put it away, do something else, and let the back of my brain sort of process that in the background, you know?
Let it percolate.
Exactly. And that's what happened, but not because he was able to rest.
No, because he had a dwarf jogging past him. Yep, he encounters Thorin on the road, and that meeting is what begins the process of turning things around. But Gandalf says something that is interesting. What do you make of him saying, "To my surprise, Thorin spoke to me"? I mean, why would he be that surprised? Is there like some kind of weird dislike between the two of them? I mean, has Gandalf irritated with the fact that Thorin's constantly jogging past him on the road? Or, why
This guy jogs past me all the time. He never speaks to me. And now he talks to me. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering that too. Like, why is it to my surprise, Gandalf? You're Gandalf. Doesn't everybody want to talk to you? Only thing I can think of is just that dwarves are often very inward looking. They're very, they don't.
Contained.
Yeah, contained's a good way of putting it. And just the idea of approaching somebody doesn't sound like something Thorin would do. Thorin's the king too. Like if you want to talk to somebody, you're going to have my people reach out to your people, So Thorin is haughty. We know that he's very prideful. And so perhaps, Gandalf was a little bit surprised, like, oh, he's humbling himself to even speak to me. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
No, dwarves kind of keep themselves to themselves, don't they?
They do. And, a lot of people used to think that the wizards were elves, right? At least the men did. I don't know that we ever get told what the dwarves thought they were. But if the dwarves saw the wizards as being sort of either elves or elf-like or allied with the elves, I can imagine that being a reason why Thorin wouldn't want to talk to him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that
So
natural
part of it.
suspicion anyway.
Oh, you're like the elves. Yeah.
Yes. Ugh.
Soon we'll get back to Gandalf's surprise at Thorin speaking to him. But before we do, we want to remind you there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just us.
Yep, because the PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
So on Facebook, just look for The Prancing Pony Podcast. Real easy to find. Follow the page to get the news and episode drops, but join the group to get involved in some really great discussions.
And on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube, we're at Prancing Pony Pod. But if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/Prancing Pony Pod.
And if you want daily Tolkien content, check out today's Tolkien Times on the PPP YouTube channel and on all your favorite podcast apps. That's my short format daily show with everything from Middle-earth Map Mondays to Fandom Fridays. And there's my new twice weekly streaming of all fun things Middle-earth on the PPP Plays. Be sure to check both of those shows out on the YouTube channel for all the PPP productions at youtube.com/@prancingponypod. Sara, pick us back up in there and let's see what Gandalf says about, well, my goodness, Thorin had something to say.
Ooh, my turn to read. Don't mind if I do. I promised to help him if I could. I was as eager as he was to see the end of Smaug, but Thorin was all for plans of battle and war, as if he were really King Thorin II, and I could see no hope in that. So I left him and went off to the Shire and picked up the threads of news. It was a strange business. I did no more than follow the lead of chance and made many mistakes on the way. Somehow I had been attracted by Bilbo long before, as a child and a young hobbit. He had not quite come of age when I had last seen him. He had stayed in my mind ever since, with his eagerness and his bright eyes and his love of tales and his questions about the wide world outside the Shire. As soon as I entered the Shire, I heard news of him. He was getting talked about, it seemed. Both his parents had died early for Shire folk, at about 80, and he had never married. He was already growing a bit queer, they said, and went off for days by himself. He could be seen talking to strangers, even dwarves. Even dwarves. Suddenly in my mind these three things came together. The great dragon with his lust and his keen hearing and scent, the sturdy heavy-booted dwarves with their old burning grudge, and the quick, soft-footed hobbit, sick at heart, I guessed, for a sight of the wide world. I laughed at myself, but I went off at once to have a look at Bilbo, to see what 20 years had done to him, and whether he was as promising as gossip seemed to make out. But he was not at home. They shook their heads in Hobbiton when I asked after him. Off again, said one hobbit. It was Holman, the gardener, I believe. Off again. He'll go right off one of these days if he isn't careful. Why, I asked him where he was going and when he would be back, and I don't know, he says, and then he looks at me queerly. It depends if I meet any, Holman, he says. It's the elves' new year tomorrow. A pity. And him so kind a body. You wouldn't find a better from the downs to the river. Better and better, I thought. I think I shall risk it. Time was getting short. I had to be with the White Council in August at the latest, or Saruman would have his way and nothing would be done. And quite apart from greater matters, that might prove fatal to the quest. The power in Dol Guldur would not leave any attempt on Erebor unhindered, unless he had something else to deal with.
Aha. You know, before we get into the discussion of this, I just have to say, maybe Frodo doesn't remember all the story, but this is pretty impressive because you got Frodo writing Gandalf, quoting Holman, quoting Bilbo. There's a reason why, if you're looking at the text on the page, Holman's quotes of Bilbo are just in italics. It's because there's already too many nested quotes.
Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to figure out who on earth was saying what about whom and when.
It's wild.
It really is. But I don't know, did Frodo, have a piece of paper and a pencil in his pocket and was doing shorthand?
I know. Was he doing stenography? Exactly. Shorthand. That's what I was thinking. Oh. Well, I did have you skip that first paragraph. It was the one where Gandalf explains that Thorin was troubled just like he was himself, and that Thorin actually asked for Gandalf's advice. Again, not something one expects from haughty Thorin Oakenshield.
No, not at all. And that is when Gandalf agreed to go with him to the Blue Mountains and listen. But Thorin, it turns out, was troubled with the things we talked about a couple of weeks ago. The loss of his ancestral treasures and the obligation of revenge on Smaug.
The obligation of revenge. And Gandalf tells his listeners here, he's telling Frodo and the others, Merry, Pippin, and Gimli, that dwarves take such duties very seriously. I'm sure Gimli's nodding his head. Indeed, they do. We talked about that a little bit as well, reading from Peoples of Middle-earth a couple of weeks ago, that for an injury to a father, a dwarf may spend a lifetime in achieving revenge.
Which, of course, really resonates with Feanor and his sons and all that kind of thing. And we discussed at the time just what a very bad idea it is to pass down generational stuff.
Exactly. Stop bequeathing impossible tasks.
Yeah, bequeath me a house, a nice table,
Seriously.
A horse and cart. Don't bequeath me a duty.
Yeah. You're not giving me a gift. You're giving me an obligation.
Thanks, Dad.
Seriously.
So anyway, picking up where I began the reading, Gandalf promised Thorin to help because, after all, he wanted to see Smaug defeated because he knew that Sauron could use the dragon with terrible effect.
But Gandalf says that Thorin is kind of going about this the wrong way. He's thinking about defeating Smaug the way they got revenge on Azog, through an organized war involving all the dwarves.
Yeah, but that didn't turn out so great.
Exactly. And as difficult as that was, because we talked about this after the Battle of Azanulbazar, the casualty rate was so high.
Yeah.
And that was just of the dwarves who made it that far. Think about all the ones that would have died on the way down, because this series of battles took years.
Yep.
But I love the way Gandalf says it, as if he were really King Thorin II. There was no hope in that. And this King Thorin II and this little line about the way he's thinking is similar to one of the notes that Christopher Tolkien brings out when he talks about this in Peoples of Middle-earth. And this is basically Tolkien's notes to himself. Thorin begins to think of vengeance on Smaug and recovery of his wealth, but he can only envisage this in terms of war, a gathering of all his people and an attempt to slay Smaug. But it is difficult to do. The Iron Hills are a long way away, and elsewhere Durin's folk are widely scattered. This is not the time that it was then, and the circumstances just dictate against this.
Yeah, and Gandalf knows this is not going to happen. So he heads to the Shire for his little holiday, as he planned, and then he hears some news that brings his whole plan together in his mind. But before telling us about this news, he mentions his past with Bilbo. He says he's been drawn to Bilbo in his early years, and in fact, he'd not yet come of age when Gandalf had last seen him.
That's right. Like we talked about earlier, it was 2920 when the Old Took died and Gandalf last visited the Shire. That would make Bilbo either 29 or 30, depending on whether the Old Took died before or after Bilbo's birthday of September 22nd. But I want to talk a little bit about what drew Gandalf to Bilbo. We read eagerness, bright eyes, love of story, and questions about the world outside the Shire.
Yeah, I mean, are these rare among hobbits? Just the last one, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, eagerness, bright eyes, certainly love of story. I feel like that's not a rare trait. Eagerness and bright eyes? That seems odd.
But maybe what he's thinking of is that this is an inbuilt curiosity in Bilbo.
Is. Yeah, and it's something we see in The Hobbit, right? That sort of battle that is often won by the Baggins side, but there is a Took side to him. Mm-hmm. And that Took side is what I think Gandalf is attracted to. I also have to wonder, given what we know of the story and how things all worked out, whether he being drawn to Bilbo was not just a natural, like, oh, this is a fun kid, he seems like an interesting guy. Maybe the draw, like everything else we see, is a little bit of external nudge.
Little prodding from Providence.
Yeah. A little prodding from Providence, as we see, because the more we look at this story and we'll talk about this very specifically, where it's like, there's so many moments where one thing changes and the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
And this is one of those moments. If Gandalf is not drawn to Bilbo, this doesn't happen and the whole thing falls apart. So right. I kind of feel like one of the things that's drawing Gandalf to Bilbo unknowingly is a little nudge.
Yeah, so obviously Gandalf has paid attention to Bilbo. We know from things that are dropped into the tales in Lord of the Rings and things like that Gandalf has a fondness anyway for the Shire and for the hobbits. But Bilbo is standing out for him amongst all the other hobbits as being a little bit unusual, just a little bit different.
And in a way that's worthy of that extra attention. And we'll see later, devotion, right? I mean, as we see him sort of leverage that to explain why Thorin needs to take Bilbo, but we'll get to that. So this is where we get the news, right? The news that Gandalf is hearing when he gets into the Shire. He hears news about Bilbo. Bilbo's being gossiped about because, well, hobbits, it's what they do. They gossip a lot. His parents had died relatively young. For hobbits, we're told that, they died in their 80s. The actual numbers, Bungo, his father, died in third age 2926 at the age of 80. That was 15 years ago. His mother, the fabulous Belladonna Took, died 8 years later in 2934. She was 82, and that was about 7 years ago. So here's 50-year-old Bilbo. His mom died 7 years ago. His dad died 15 years ago. So yeah, he's different than a lot of hobbits in that regard.
It is. This is something that I've pointed out in Tolkien before in various other places, because, there are other places than the Prancing Pony podcast. Did you know?
There are. Of course there are. Love the fandom.
Yes, indeed. Tolkien has a problem with family. So many of the families throughout the Legendarium are broken. So, if we go back to The Hobbit, here we have Bilbo, who is already thought of as being a bit strange because he goes off and does all these sorts of things. But at the age of 50, he's never married, has no children. His parents are also not around and they died young. Now, why? You got to ask yourself, why does Tolkien leave Bilbo so unencumbered? Well, that's because Bilbo can literally grab his pocket handkerchief and run out the door. And there's nobody left behind to worry about him or for him to worry about. That's it. Because if you go to the Lord of the Rings and you think about the families in the Lord of the Rings, there are very, very few actual families in the Lord of the Rings that are whole.
Strong, tight nuclear families. You're right. I'm thinking Faramir, Boromir, and Denethor, mother's already dead.
Yep.
Aragorn, mother's dead, father's long dead.
Yep.
Arwen, mother's dead. Well,
yep. Well, gone.
Exactly. Yes. There are no dwarven mothers except for Dís, as we know.
Yes,
right?
Goodness knows.
Dwarven women.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting point. You can all of a sudden, as you mentioned that, you start to think of all these other examples.
Yeah. Where's Legolas's mother?
Yeah, we have no clue.
Nope. Frodo's mother and father, dead. Sam, his mother?
Nowhere in the picture. She must be
nowhere
dead as
in
well.
The picture, never once mentioned. And you pick up hints that she's gone.
I think she's in the family tree, but that's all you get.
She's in the family tree, but I think she's gone, as in probably dead, because she's never mentioned at all.
Well, as old as Gamgee is, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Now, if you go to Theoden, his wife is dead. His son is dead.
Éomer and Éowyn's mother and father are both dead.
Are dead. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It just goes on, doesn't it?
Do you know we've got Bombadil and Goldberry, right? They
No
are
kids,
married. They have
though.
no children, by the way, but they're married. The only family that is whole and has children in the entirety of The Lord of the Rings until you get to the very end is Farmer Maggot.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm thinking of some First Age stuff, but even then, family stuff is weird. I mean, okay, Turin still has his mother and father, but not in a normal traditional sense.
No.
Father's chained to a chair on Thangorodrim. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Turin is essentially orphaned.
Oh, he really is. So is Tuor. Yeah, and he literally is.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Tolkien has a problem with families.
Well, and then and going way off track here in terms of this isn't even remotely anything we talked about in the notes, but I can't help but think of the fact that for Tolkien, his own father died when he was 3. His own mother died when he was 11. This is hard. Mm-hmm. This sense of loss. It's why I don't remember who it was that was talking about this. Oh, I think it was an interview that is going to come out later this season. He was quoting somebody else as having said that I once believed that Lord of the Rings to be the greatest story ever told. And now I believe it's the saddest story ever told. And there is a sense of loss that permeates the entire legendarium. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it does come to that, doesn't it? A lot of it comes to family loss.
Yes. It's
parental
huge.
loss, sibling loss. I mean, you think about Faramir and the pain that he just exudes in the text when he talks about the loss of Boromir.
There is so much loss within families. And things don't start getting put back to rights until the ring is destroyed and Sauron is defeated. At which point we have many weddings and many children.
Sam marries Rosie and he has more kids than any other Hobbit before him.
Poor Rosie.
Because the old Took had the record for not only living the longest, but having had the most kids. Bilbo breaks his record for longevity. Sam breaks the record for productivity.
Yeah, can I just point out that it's Rose that breaks that record? Sam
had
only a very small amount to do with it.
Didn't mean to imply otherwise. Would not be safe to imply otherwise, that's for sure.
Anyway, that was quite the digression, but I just felt it was something worth noting that,
It's a really good one. I think so. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is to do with the narrative. It is a lot easier for Bilbo to go skipping off on an adventure when he doesn't have to worry about the wife and kids.
There's often a reason why all the Disney princesses are orphans too, I mean, it's the same. It just makes it easier to tell a story.
So much easier. It's just part of the way in which the narrative works. It just makes sense. I get it. But then we find, if you push it further, that there are a lot of characters for whom it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And yet there's
still a broken family somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of Galadriel and Celeborn. They're married. They had a child, but she's gone.
Yep.
Now, in other versions of the story, they also had Amroth, but that's
in other versions.
That's next season.
Yeah. So, like I said, Bilbo is already being viewed in the Shire as being a bit strange because he's 50, but he's not married. And that is very unusual for a hobbit. He's also seen as a bit queer because he travels by himself for days at a time. He goes off.
Man, I would do that in a heartbeat if I could. Give me 5 days to travel someplace, Just take a little mini vacation.
And also, he talks to strangers, including dwarves.
Yeah, that's no wonder he's strange to the hobbits. I mean, remember the Hobbit's parochialism, folks.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's strange to them. Even folks in the Marish are strange to folks in Hobbiton, and folks in the Buckland are really strange.
Oh,
I mean,
where folks are queer.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't take much for hobbits to even other hobbits.
No, not at all. And the idea of being even slightly interested in anything outside of the Shire is just beyond their understanding. Because why would you?
Hobbit nature, really. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But of course, that's a good thing in Gandalf's mind because that makes him like a possibility for things. And it's that bit of news that serves as the last piece, the thing that sort of snaps it all together for Gandalf as his mind has worked on the problem. And now he's got it, right? 1, the dragon, who can hear and smell quite well, too well for the dwarves to take by surprise. 2, the dwarves with their undying vengeance quest. And 3, the stealthy hobbit who's longing to see the world, supposedly.
Yeah. But the text then says that he laughed at himself. I mean, did he think this was silly or unlikely or both? I mean, where does this come from?
I think the laugh might be like richly ironic. Oh, this is great. Thorin's going to love this. You know? But yeah, I think he probably sees this as a real long shot, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, throwing a hobbit at a dragon. That's definitely a long shot.
Dwarves first, who are going to, you know, we're going to find out next week. The dwarves really have virtually no respect at all for the hobbits. They see them as absolute, just, you know, worthless, just a bunch of people to take advantage of in trades, you know?
Right. We talked about, was it just last week, I think, about how the dwarves would do agricultural things if they had to, but they really didn't want to ever.
Yeah, exactly.
And what do the hobbits do?
Yeah, agriculture. They farm.
Exactly.
They love good tilled earth, right?
Yeah. So they look down on that, don't they? They see that
really
as the
do.
very least of skills.
It's not craftsmanship.
Exactly.
Though I would argue that perhaps, you know, crossbreeding various kinds of pipeweed in order to develop better strains, you know, that's a craftsman's skill right there. I think these people know what they're doing, but
yeah, there's certainly a motivation behind it.
That's fair. So this idea, right? Where did the idea come from? In Peoples of Middle Earth, there's a note that says that Gandalf himself would say he was directed, or that he was meant to take this course, or was chosen.
Yeah, all very interesting words for us, aren't they? Yeah. So is this another outside influence leading Gandalf to this choice? The earliest version of the story, as given to us in Peoples of Middle Earth, suggests that. It says, well then, I was, I suppose, chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And that while the hobbits needed education, and we'll get to that more next week, Bilbo was chosen, and I was chosen to choose him.
Chosen to choose him.
There's a whole load of choosing going on in there.
There really is. Though whether anything was, you know, any person was making a choice beyond Gandalf for Bilbo is interesting. So whether he thinks this is silly, unlikely, ironic, or something else altogether, Gandalf goes off to find Bilbo to see what 20 years had done. And look, I know what 20 years has done to me, so yikes.
You know, I would hesitate to disagree with you, Alan, but folks, just be grateful this is audio only.
Yeah, faces for radio. That's what we've been saying for 9 years.
But he wasn't there. Instead, Gandalf asked around in Hobbiton and got some info from Holman. Who's Holman?
Good old Holman. Holman, this is Holman Greenhand, or Cousin Holman to Hamfast Gamgee, Sam's father. Back in the Ivy Bush, the gaffer's chatting with folks, including Sandyman and Old Noakes. This is in a Long Expected Party, when he says, I'd not long come prenticed to old Holman, him being my dad's cousin. So that's who we're talking about. That's old Holman. So if anybody would know about Bilbo, Holman certainly would. I mean, he has the same position that the gaffer and then Sam would eventually have.
Right, yeah. And Holman says Bilbo's gone off again. And in typical Hobbit fashion, expresses concern he'll go right off one of these days.
Oh, man. The Hobbits are great.
Yeah, Holman relates his conversation with Bilbo. He doesn't know where he's going or when he'll be back, and that it will depend on if he meets any elves, because it's their new year the following day.
I love that because it also gives us a timeline for when Gandalf returned to the Shire. Remember, we know that he met with Thorin on March 15th. I mean, we're actually given that date explicitly in the text. And then we also know, according to the footnote for this passage, that the Elvish New Year began on a day known as Ystare, the day before the first day of Tuile, or spring, and that day corresponded more or less with Shire April 6th. So he was actually in the Blue Mountains for quite some time, a couple of weeks.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. Now, Holman seems to regret Bilbo's choices. Even though he admires him, he says you wouldn't find a better hobbit. He's just a bit concerned about the fact that he keeps going off by himself, and that's not normal for a hobbit.
It's not hobbit-like, no.
It's not hobbit-like. But this just prompts Gandalf to think things might be going his way.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, you've got this world-eager hobbit off to see the elves. What a good idea to connect him with the dwarves.
but he had to hurry. I mean, he knew he had to get back to the White Council in about 4 months' time, right? It also gives us the timeline, that is, gives us the pressure because he knows he has to be there in August at the latest. So less than 4 months, or Saruman is going to be successful in delaying action against Sauron again. That's been 90 years. We got to take action now.
Yeah. And not only is that a problem in general, I mean, it's Sauron, but it's a huge problem for the quest for Erebor, because Sauron is not going to let an assault on that mountain happen without him getting involved.
No, we got to drive him away before we make this attempt. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think we should carry on with our next bit of reading, Alan.
All right, then.
So I rode off back to Thorin in haste to tackle the difficult task of persuading him to put aside his lofty designs and go secretly and take Bilbo with him, without seeing Bilbo first. It was a mistake and nearly proved disastrous, for Bilbo had changed, of course. At least he was getting rather greedy and fat, and his old desires had dwindled down to a sort of private dream. Nothing could have been more dismaying than to find it actually in danger of coming true. He was altogether bewildered and made a complete fool of himself. Thorin would have left in a rage but for another strange chance, which I will mention in a moment. But you know how things went, at any rate as Bilbo saw them. The story would sound rather different if I had written it. For one thing, he did not realize at all how fatuous the dwarves thought him, nor how angry they were with me. Thorin was much more indignant and contemptuous than he perceived. He was indeed contemptuous from the beginning, and thought then that I had planned the whole affair simply so as to make a mock of him. It was only the map and the key that saved the situation. But I had not thought of them for years. It was not until I got to the Shire and had time to reflect on Thorin's tale that I suddenly remembered the strange chance that had put them in my hands. And it began now to look less like chance. I remembered a dangerous journey of mine 91 years before, when I had entered Dol Guldur in disguise, and had found there an unhappy dwarf dying in the pits. I had no idea who he was. He had a map that had belonged to Durin's folk in Moria, and a key that seemed to go with it, though he was too far gone to explain it. And he said that he had possessed a great ring. Nearly all his ravings were of that. The last of the 7, he said over and over again. But all these things he might have come by in many ways. He might have been a messenger, caught as he fled, or even a thief trapped by a greater thief. But he gave the map and the key to me. For my son, he said, and then he died. And soon after I escaped myself. I stowed the things away, and by some warning of my heart I kept them always with me, safe, but soon almost forgotten. I had other business in Dol Guldur, more important and perilous than all the treasure of Erebor.
Well, he wasn't wrong about that.
No, he wasn't. Not at all. Few important things indeed.
Yeah, but now, having come up with this crazy idea, Gandalf races back to the Blue Mountains to talk Thorin into it.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be hard enough to talk him out of his grand plan of a dwarf war on Smaug. But how much harder is it going to be to talk him into taking a hobbit with him?
A lot harder. Degree of difficulty 9.9. We get a reminder here that this is all being told well after the fact. I really do love the way the story is presented as Gandalf telling the story, but with his own commentary, like why I did this or what I was thinking about when I did X. It's really, really cool.
Narrative plus meta-narrative, all in a story.
It's really both. Yeah, exactly. All in an appendix written by Frodo. I mean, again, it's a masterstroke, really. So
it is.
Gandalf acknowledges, look, it was a mistake to do this without having first actually met Bilbo, right? I made this decision based only on the rumors about Bilbo, the fact that he'd gone away for the Elves' New Year, because of course Bilbo had changed since he was 30, not even an adult yet, because remember, hobbits don't come of age till 33, back when Gandalf was last in the Shire.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Gandalf says to Frodo, remember, that Bilbo had gotten rather greedy and fat. Well, of course he has. He's a hobbit. And now his wild, adventurous side was just a private dream. So in other words, the Baggins side seems to have overtaken the Duke side.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. This is a guy who's just very comfortable in his life. And who can blame him, right? He is wealthy.
Absolutely.
We know that. So, of course, he's, a little bit fat. This is not a surprise that a guy who's a medievalist writing a story about, sort of medieval kind of world, that the wealthy guy is fat, because that's just the way it was, because you could afford food. You weren't starving. What were you doing in my forest? I was starving. And that comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, I feel a little called out, like in my 50s and feeling a little fat myself. I'm like, come on now, Gandalf, give the guy a break.
Right.
It's just age, but it isn't just age. Like you said, his wild adventure side, his Took side, is now a private dream, and it's a dream he would never actually want to make a reality. Sort of like, I don't know, I think I'd love to skydive someday. No, I wouldn't. If you tried to get me on a plane to go do it, I would absolutely. Nope, that's just a private dream. Let's keep it that way.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
that's completely true. He's
so real.
very comfortable.
He
And
is.
who can blame him? He's a middle-aged hobbit. He's got a well-filled pantry, plenty of money.
Yeah.
He's got his own house. He's a confirmed bachelor.
Oh, very much so at this point. Yeah.
Indeed. So, he does whatever he wants to do.
Yeah,
There's
whenever he
nobody
wants it.
to say no, or to suggest that what he's doing should not be done and you need to
No
stay home and do the
obligations
chores.
to keep him home. Right.
Exactly. So, of course, he's got comfortable. And if he goes off for a few little jaunts, that's because he enjoys his own company, he likes exploring a little bit, but then he's going home. To his comfortable hobbit hole.
To his books, to his pipes, to his food. Yeah.
Of course, he's got comfortable. I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Gandalf really, he didn't do this very well. He didn't plan it that well.
No, he was kind of winging it a little too much here. We get a reference to Bilbo being bewildered, and I love the word choice here in Unfinished Tales, because that is the word, or at least a word, used to describe Bilbo in that moment. Just before Gandalf arrives with the last 4 dwarves, including Thorin, we read this. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry, and altogether bewildered and bewothered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he ever remembered.
I've been there.
Love
Bilbo.
that line. Most awkward Wednesday. But bewildered and bewothered, yes. And so, of course, for Gandalf to say he was bewildered, yes, he was.
Yes, because what are you asking me to do? And why are you asking me to do this? And what on earth is going on?
Makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and Thorin, not that surprisingly, he very nearly did leave in a rage.
Of course.
But Gandalf has an ace up his sleeve, or rather, a map and a key, to be more precise.
Yeah, that's true.
And we will get to that later, as Gandalf implies. And Gandalf returns to the story that Frodo knows, though once again mentioning that it's as Bilbo saw it, which, would definitely have its own slant, wouldn't it?
And of course, even by this point, of course, as Tolkien is writing this and then including it in what would have been the appendix, the story of the Hobbit would have been retconned, right? Because he wrote, he rewrote all of chapter 5, the Riddles in the Dark chapter. But Bilbo saw it a particular way. The truth was something else. But then what about Gandalf? If Gandalf had written the story, what would the Hobbit look like? What would the Hobbit look like if it were written from his perspective?
I think there would be a lot of frustration and annoyance
Fool
in the
of a
tone of the
Baggins.
narrator. Fool of a Baggins. Yes.
Seriously.
Yes.
Stupid pocket handkerchief. You don't need one. Yeah. I think Confusticate and Bebother these dwarves would absolutely stay in there, because he would feel the same. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. So, yeah, I mean, obviously you'd have possibly a little bit more of an objective viewpoint if it was from Gandalf's point of view.
Yeah.
But I'm quite glad that we get it through the eyes of the Hobbit, because he sees the world in a very different way. Gandalf knows this world far better.
He knows everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and again, that's consistent with what we see in Lord of the Rings too. That's sort of the story is often, almost always, told through the eyes of the person who's least knowledgeable.
Yes.
Whether that's Sam or there's Merry and Pippin. I mean, sometimes it's somebody else, like Gimli, when they're going through the paths of the dead. But most of the time it's Sam. Most of the time it's one of the hobbits. And I love that. Yeah, I think you're right. It does give us more of a sense of exploration and wonder as we see things.
It
also
does,
gives us the full story. Gandalf had written
yes.
It ends at Mirkwood.
That's it. But it does give us that because we learn alongside the hobbits or those who know least in that moment. We have to learn these things. And this is a really interesting way of us getting to know what they get to know.
Exactly.
Now, Bilbo, and I do feel a bit sorry for him here.
A little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. He didn't realize just how badly the dwarves perceived him.
Mm-hmm.
Fatuous means silly and pointless, foolish, childish, idiotic. They really didn't think he was worth their time.
No.
Oh, poor old Bilbo. But he also had no idea how angry and annoyed Thorin was. And that's not a surprise. He doesn't really know who Thorin is or what Thorin's motivation is, what's underpinning all of Thorin's thinking. Mm-hmm. So, you get why he doesn't really understand just how angry Thorin is. Thorin is so angry that he believed Gandalf had set this all up just to mock him.
Like a sophisticated prank. Are you kidding me, Gandalf? I love that. And that's when we finally get to the thing that saved the quest for Erebor, the map and the key. Once again, we see in Tolkien this series of events, seemingly disconnected, often spread out over time, and they're all connected. We talked about this earlier with Gandalf being drawn to Bilbo. But even before that, right? But for Gandalf going into Dol Guldur and encountering Thrain, he doesn't have the map and the key. And if he doesn't have those, Thorin doesn't go with Bilbo, and you could just follow that string of events.
Yes.
I mean, everything is contingent on each of the previous things.
Yes, but that's how Tolkien's stories work, don't they?
Yeah,
they
do. That's why they work so well.
Yes, yeah. Think about Chapter 2 of Fellowship of the Ring, Shadow of the Past, when Gandalf says to not to Thorin at all, says to Frodo at this point, Gandalf says to Frodo that Bilbo was meant to find the ring.
Yes, in which case you were meant to have it.
Meant to have it, and that is a comforting thought because that's how things work. For Gandalf, that there is a power outside of this, providence or whatever you wish to call it, that means that the things that happen are happening for a reason, and things will happen in the way that they're supposed to happen.
It is comforting.
It is a comforting thought.
Because when you are working within fate, it's only comforting if you understand all of the legendarium, I suppose. Well, so poor Frodo, it's not very comforting, but in that moment. When you realize it's the characters who are trying to kind of go against fate that end up struggling the most and having the most, problems, the most difficulty, the ones that work within fate that sort of take hold and be like, this is my quest. I'm thinking of like Beren and Luthien, they do what they know they need to do. And it works because it is part of the plan. They may not know it's part of the plan at that point. I get that. But then when people fight against the plan, Feanor comes to mind. Things go awfully, and I think that's the thing here. It is a bit of a comfort, but Bilbo certainly doesn't understand that big picture, but that big picture is a part of this whole thing. I mean, that's what Gandalf's explaining here in this whole story.
Indeed. And that's why I think we read here that even Gandalf realizes that his acquisition of the map and the key now look less like chance.
I love that. I love that even Gandalf's like, wait a minute. This chance meeting that I really thought was a chance meeting, even that wasn't chance. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 91 years before this, Gandalf encountered a dying dwarf, nameless in the pits of Dol Guldur. And we get a retelling of the account in Dol Guldur, as well as his thoughts on it. It could have been a messenger. It could have been a thief. And he was pretty far gone.
Yeah.
But
didn't know his own name.
Right, but he gives these very important things to Gandalf, even if Gandalf doesn't know how important they are in that moment, and says they're for my son, and Gandalf keeps them close.
Just in case,
just in case,
I tend to, if I haven't used something in 6 months, I'd like to throw it away. That would have been bad.
91 years? Yeah, I ain't hanging on.
I'm not holding on to that through so many moves. No way. How did Gandalf have these things with him, though, at the day and time that he needed them? That was a question that kind of has always stuck with me. Like, I don't understand that. For that, I want to take a look at Peoples of Middle-earth and the other note that Christopher Tolkien included. And here, it's again, Tolkien writing notes to himself, son of thinking out loud, if you will. He's asking himself the same question, and he actually gives himself the answers. Why did he not then, or much earlier, reveal to Thorin that he had met Thrain in Dol Guldur? 2 answers. He had not met him, talking about Thorin, and did not even know where he was. From 2850 on, his chief concern had been with Dol Guldur and the council. He had not been west for a long time. The old Took died in 2920, so Gandalf had not in 2942 been in the Shire for 22 years, and then probably only briefly. He was probably unaware who the dwarf was in Dol Guldur, since the 7th ring would be no clue. Dwarves kept the possession of rings very secret, and Thrain did not know his own name. It was probably only from Thorin's conversation that he guessed and produced the evidence characteristically at a suitable chance.
Ah, that's really good, isn't it?
Isn't it?
I mean,
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely right that, from 2850 on, his chief concern had been with Dol Guldur and the council. He'd had bigger things to think about.
Yeah, he's not worried about a map and a key for Erebor, right?
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, this little souvenir that he's been carrying around for his little summer trip into Dol Guldur. I went to Dol Guldur and all I got was this map and a key.
All I got was this stupid map. Yeah.
So yes, he's had other things on his mind. But what we do know about Gandalf is that he can piece things together.
Yes, he can. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's obviously what happens here. Mm-hmm. But we'll look at a fuller tale next week when we look at the other versions of the text.
That we will. Folks, if you're enjoying the Prancing Pony podcast, please consider supporting the show by joining the fellowship of the podcast. That's what gives me the time and the resources that I need to work on making the show the best that it can be. And when you join, you become part of an amazing Discord community. You get live episode recordings. They're so much fun. Hangouts every month. You get episode postscripts. You can get ad-free episodes, free merch, and more.
Yeah, what are you waiting for? Because they are fun. You can also become part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join us as a guest in the North Wing. So please go to patreon.com/prancingponypod to show your support and join the fellowship of the podcast.
Of course, you can always help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and a rating and comments on Spotify. And please recommend us to your friends. Sara, pick up where I left off. This is getting good, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's getting right into the meat of it. Said the vegetarian. Right. Fortunately, I did not make any mistake in my use of them. I kept them up my sleeve, as you say in the Shire, until things looked quite hopeless. As soon as Thorin saw them, he really made up his mind to follow my plan, as far as a secret expedition went, at any rate. Whatever he thought of Bilbo, he would have set out himself. The existence of a secret door, only discoverable by dwarves, made it seem at least possible to find out something of the dragon's doings, perhaps even to recover some gold or some heirloom to ease his heart's longings. But that was not enough for me. I knew in my heart that Bilbo must go with him, or the whole quest would be a failure, or, as I should say now, the far more important events by the way would not come to pass. So I had still to persuade Thorin to take him. There were many difficulties on the road afterwards, but for me this was the most difficult part of the whole affair. Though I argued with him far into the night after Bilbo had retired, it was not finally settled until early the next morning. Thorin was contemptuous and suspicious. "He is soft," he snorted. "Soft as the mud of his shire, and silly. His mother died too soon. You are playing some crooked game of your own, Master Gandalf. I am sure that you have other purposes than helping me." "Well, you are quite right," I said. "If I had no other purposes, I should not be helping you at all. Great as your affairs may seem to you, they are only a small strand in the great web. I am concerned with many strands. But that should make my advice more weighty, not less." I spoke at last with great heat. "Listen to me, Thorin Oakenshield," I said. "If this hobbit goes with you, you will succeed. If not, you will fail. A foresight is on me, and I am warning you." There you go.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great little spot to hold off on the reading. My goodness.
Only a fool is
Cliffhanger.
going to disregard a warning from Gandalf, I would have thought.
I would think. Now, we did have you skip the first paragraph of this section because we inadvertently covered it a bit at the end of the last one, talking about Gandalf obtaining the key from Thrain II.
Yeah, but it's worth a quick reminder that although he's usually just referred to as Thrain, son of Thror, he is the second of that name.
Mm-hmm.
The first was the son of Nine the First and the grandson of Durin the Sixth. After watching his dad and grandfather get killed by the Balrog, he fled Moria in Third Age 1981, and he was the one who established Erebor 18 years later in 1999.
Also called Thrain the Smart or Thrain the Survivor. like, get out of Dodge. My dad's dead. My grandfather's dead. We're leaving. I'm out. Interesting also that since Thorin never mentioned the last of the seven. So I wonder if Thorin had known that his father had it. I mean, that's actually the first hurdle because we know they kept it so secret. Even Thorin might not have known. But assuming Thorin had known, what if he'd told Gandalf, my father had the last of the seven? That would have led Gandalf to know exactly who this was.
Right.
When he gets the ring. Would he have then given the map and key earlier? And would that have been too soon? What if? What if Thorin, who doesn't trust anybody, never would have told him? But what if Thorin had said, my father had the last of the seven. You know, he was never seen again. We believe he's been killed and the ring has been taken by Sauron. And Gandalf's like, wait a minute. I mean, yes, the ring is gone. I don't have any good news for you on that front. But the good news is I can confirm your father's dead. And here's the map and key he gave me.
If good news you call it.
Well, yeah, he's not being tortured anymore.
This is true. But yeah, but the thing is, though, as we know from the text, everything happens the way that it should.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine Thorin going off way too early without Bilbo, 100 years before, maybe even before Bilbo's born. Not 100 years, but at no more than 91 years. But, you know, it could have been 80 years ago and then tried to do the attack on Smaug too soon. Anyway.
And it wouldn't have worked.
No, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, which is why that didn't
why it
happen.
Happened the way it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So picking up where you did read, Gandalf knew to keep the map and key as the ace up his sleeve, proverbially speaking.
Yeah, it was the key, no pun intended, to ensuring that Thorin would make the effort.
Wow.
Okay, maybe the pun was intended. I'm just going to leave it right there.
Just own it. That's right. Just own it.
Yeah, it's the best thing to do with a pun. But even if he'd refused Bilbo, he'd still have tried with the key and the map to find the door, right? Of course he would, because, you know, what is Thorin's priority?
Obligation of revenge. You know?
Exactly. And at least some gold or heirloom might be found that way. Yeah, but can you imagine what would have happened if the dwarves had attempted to go down that hallway to Smaug's lair? I mean, they're not exactly ninja dwarves, are they?
No. Little dwarven shish kebab right there. Yeah, that is all
snack
over.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Smaug's hungry.
Yes,
little appetizer.
and if they're wearing their armor, it comes in its own foil wrapping.
Yeah, it's like potato skins, you know? So, of course, Gandalf knew that Bilbo had to go. And here in this retelling, once again, far after the fact, he's able to say that Bilbo's going wasn't specifically about the Quest of Erebor, really. It was about the far more important events by the way. He doesn't say that, but obviously what he means here is the finding of the One Ring. Full stop.
Right. Yeah. Gandalf, though, he still had the unenviable task of convincing Thorin and the dwarves to take Bilbo.
Oh, yeah.
That would take a few glasses of the old Wynyards, I would imagine.
Yes, it would.
Now, from Gandalf's perspective, he says this was the hardest thing in the whole quest. Harder than the trolls, the goblins, the wargs, the spiders, or the dragon, which, let's face it, Gandalf didn't actually encounter.
No, that's true. I mean, he was there with them, with the trolls and the goblins and the wargs, but then that was it. Yeah.
But not the dragon.
Not the spiders. No.
Yeah.
And not the barrels either. I didn't even think about that, but the barrels were sort of a turning point. I mean, that's when Bilbo literally saved them. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. But it does say something that this was the toughest bit of the entire quest for Gandalf, was persuading this stubborn dwarf.
Yeah.
But finally, we get the beginnings of Gandalf's recollection of the conversation he had with Thorin, presumably after Bilbo had gone to sleep.
Exactly. And this is where we get Thorin again described as contemptuous, but this time he's also described as suspicious, which is great, right? Mostly suspicious not of Bilbo, but of Gandalf and his motives. But he's very, very critical of Bilbo. Again, in fairness, Bilbo was soft and a little bit silly. I mean, this is a 50-year-old hobbit who collapsed to the floor crying, struck by lightning, while shaking like a jelly that was melting. I mean,
yes, I might judge on that one too.
I think I might too. I could hardly blame Thorin, haughty and contemptuous though he may be. I wouldn't want to take him along.
No, he wouldn't be my top choice.
He seems a liability, you know?
A little bit, yeah. No, I think Thorin's quite reasonable in his criticisms on this.
I think so, yeah.
But Thorin even goes so far as to accuse Gandalf of having ulterior motives, which, of course, he does. Just not the ulterior motives that Thorin thinks he has. They are definitely there, because he's an Istar, for crying out loud. He's got a bit of a job to do.
Yeah, he does.
But this explains why Gandalf readily admits this fact. You might think your quest very important, but in the big scheme of things, it's really nothing at all. And that really resonates with the end of The Hobbit, doesn't it?
It does. It makes me think of, okay, look, I'm going to rephrase it, and then I'm going to give you the other quote. Great as your affairs may seem to you, they are only a small strand in the great web. Tell me that doesn't ring a bell with this line that he says to Bilbo at the end of The Hobbit. You don't really suppose, do you, that all your adventures and escapes were managed by mere luck just for your sole benefit? You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I am very fond of you, but you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world after all.
Yeah.
It's all about that perspective, isn't it?
It is. But as Gandalf points out, Thorin thinks this strand is an important strand, but Gandalf's got like a bajillion strands that he's dealing with. He's literally juggling plates. He
really is. And I think, I don't remember where it is. It might be in Of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. There's something that says it would have been nothing more than a footnote, the Quest of Erebor, had it not been for Bilbo finding the One Ring. That's the only historically relevant moment that happened here.
Yes. And it's incredibly important, actually.
Vital, central, essential, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And yes, when we get to the end parts of the Hobbit story and the dragon is defeated, this is a good thing. This is what Gandalf wanted. Right. But in actual fact, it's a bit of a side benefit in the end.
It really is. I mean, it's what matters is the finding of the ring. It is an existential threat, the ring itself.
Yes.
Whereas Smaug is still mortal. He will die. He, at some point, I don't know who wants to clean that up, but he's not the existential threat for the entire West the way the ring is.
Right.
And that's why it ends up being the central thing. But it really is this big picture perspective. And I think we see that a lot with Gandalf. I mean, I'm all of a sudden thinking of another moment. Denethor, who's talking about the responsibility of being a steward. Gandalf's like, don't you know I'm a steward too?
For I too am a steward.
But it's of everything, right? I've got a much bigger realm to steward than you do, man. And I've got to look at the big picture. I consider it a win if at the end of all this, there's anything growing, right? That like, is there life after this? You're worried about your realm. You're worried about petty politics and the existence of a state. I'm worried about the existence of life itself in the face of Sauron.
When you think about it like that, Gandalf has the heaviest burden of anybody in Middle-earth at this point. I mean, Frodo's carrying the One Ring, but this burden is it's a huge burden.
And it's a burden that he has to carry for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Frodo, to his credit, carries probably the most intense burden, but for a relatively short time in comparison to the burden that Gandalf has. But as you pointed that out, I was going back in my mind to the moment where Círdan gives him the ring. Because he senses that too. He knows that the job you have to do is the hardest job. And may this ring give you the strength you need to accomplish it. Once again, Círdan the hero, the unsung hero. Love that guy.
The unsung hero.
Oh, man.
Indeed. I mean, there's a fascinating little segue as well, because we know what Galadriel is doing with Nenya.
Yes.
And we know really what Elrond is doing. Because both of those elvish rings are kind of freeze framing those two great elven kingdoms, keeping them preserved in amber, right?
Yep.
What is Gandalf doing with his ring, with Narya? What is he doing with it? How is it helping him?
He's using it to kindle the hearts.
Yeah.
Right? Now I'm going to actually go back to the text, because I was talking about how this reminded me of that Círdan moment. I pulled that up. And of course, that ring had first been given to Círdan by Gil-galad. And then I'm quoting now from the Silmarillion from Of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. But he had surrendered it to Mithrandir, for he knew whence he came and whither at last he would return. Take now this ring, he said, for thy labors and thy cares will be heavy, but in all it will support thee and defend thee from weariness. For this is the ring of fire, and herewith, maybe, thou shalt rekindle hearts to the valor of old in a world that grows chill. Oh.
And that is such a different use of the elven rings to the
Yes,
other two.
It really is. And it's also one of those rare moments of somebody voluntarily giving a ring of power to somebody else. I can't see Galadriel or even certainly Gil-galad before did give it to Círdan, but I can't see Elrond or Galadriel giving their rings away at this point.
Oh, you can try taking Narya off.
I mean, if Celeborn said, hey, can I borrow that for a bit? The answer is no, honey. You cannot.
No, you could just try and take Nenya away from Galadriel, but I wish you the very best of luck and a nice deep grave.
Yeah, I was going to say a very, very fun funeral for everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get back to this big picture perspective
of
Gandalf's, because he argues, I think convincingly, that his big picture perspective should give his advice more authority, not less.
You'd think.
That's right.
He is right. I mean, all it takes is for Thorin to think a little beyond himself, and it should give Gandalf's argument more authority.
Yeah, but that's the problem with Thorin, isn't it? He's not very good at thinking outside of his desires in the moment.
No, he's not.
Yeah. And he concludes this section, at least, with a firm, possibly angry prediction. If you take Bilbo with you, this will work. If you don't, it won't.
I love that. Gandalf telling everybody there, I spoke at last with great heat. I think that means I raised my voice a little. Gandalf sort of downplaying it. He claims that a foresight is on him, leading him to provide this warning. And I want to ask you, where do you think this foresight is coming from?
Yeah, that is really interesting, isn't it? Because when the Astari are sent into Middle-earth, they have to inhabit actual bodies. Yeah. And these bodies, of course, as we know, can be harmed.
Capable of being killed,
Capable of being killed. And in order to actually inhabit these physical mortal bodies, although they're mortal in a very different way.
Well, right. They're more like elven bodies in the sense that they're not going to get sick or die of old age. But they can be killed. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But they have to give up certain elements of their Maiar traits to do that. So obviously, being a Maiar means you can't squeeze yourself into a human skin suit.
No, you can't. You can dress up as one, right? Your raiment. But that's the best you can do. But then you're not really one of them. And I think that's the whole point with Gandalf is, and the other wizards, you need to be of them to encourage them and fight Sauron alongside them.
Yeah. But as to where the foresight is coming from, I mean, this is a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Because I would point to, before I, even try and answer that question, point to what happens to Gandalf when he battles the Balrog and falls.
Yeah.
Right? He strays out of time and he becomes something else. In other words, there are forces acting upon him from outside.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Iluvatar specifically, right? I mean, Tolkien himself says Iluvatar. Authority with the letter A in a letter that authority sent him back. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the big bosses upstairs.
Yeah. The Valar may have sent the Astari, but it's Iluvatar himself that sent Gandalf back after his death. Yeah.
Right. So I would suggest that if he's getting foresight on occasions, that this is a direct line coming being dialed in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, is this Iluvatar or is this, at this point, since he's still Gandalf the Grey, is this the Valar? Right? Is this Manwë, or is this all the way up to Iluvatar? There's no way of knowing which one, who it is. It could be Irmo because he's the master of visions and dreams. It could be Manwë as the High King and the one who's got the closest connection to Iluvatar. It could even be Iluvatar himself.
But it's definitely an outside influence
Exactly.
coming in, isn't it?
It's not him remembering the plan because, like we talked about, they gave up a lot of their Maiar knowledge when they came and inhabited these bodies. And there's a place, and I can't remember now if it's in the Astari chapter or in the letters of Tolkien, where he acknowledges that they don't they have to try to remember these things. It's not easy for them to recall their life in Valinor. Like they just can't do it. It's not part of, because it's not part of their physical existence,
right.
Part of who they were, not really who they are, because they are in living bodies now.
Yes, they are.
So
that's going to be a fun chapter when you get to it.
Oh, I can't wait. That is going to be a fun one. Yeah.
So in the meantime, before we actually get to the Astari, I think you should carry on the reading.
I think I will. I love this because we get one of my favorite phrases in here. Look after your darling.
I know your fame, Thorin answered. I hope it is merited. But this foolish business of your Hobbit makes me wonder whether it is foresight that is on you, and you are not crazed rather than foreseeing. So many cares may have disordered your wits. There have certainly been enough to do so, I said, and among them I find most exasperating a proud dwarf who seeks advice from me, without claim on me that I know of, and then rewards me with insolence. Go your own ways, Thorin Oakenshield, if you will, but if you flout my advice, you will walk to disaster, and you will get neither counsel nor aid from me again until the shadow falls on you. And curb your pride and your greed, or you will fall at the end of whatever path you take, though your hands be full of gold. He blenched a little at that, but his eyes smoldered. Do not threaten me, he said. I will use my own judgment in this matter, as in all that concerns me. Do so, then, I said. I can say no more, unless it is this. I do not give my love or trust lightly, Thorin, but I am fond of this hobbit, and wish him well. Treat him well, and you shall have my friendship to the end of your days. I said that without hope of persuading him, but I could have said nothing better. Dwarves understand devotion to friends and gratitude to those who help them. Very well, Thorin said at last, after a silence. He shall set out with my company, if he dares, which I doubt. But if you insist on burdening me with him, you must come too and look after your darling. Good, I answered. I will come, and stay with you as long as I can, at least until you have discovered his worth. It proved well in the end, but at the time I was troubled, for I had the urgent matter of the White Council on my hands. So it was that the Quest of Erebor set out. I do not suppose that when it started, Thorin had any real hope of destroying Smaug. There was no hope. Yet it happened. But alas, Thorin did not live to enjoy his triumph or his treasure. Pride and greed overcame him, in spite of my warning.
But surely that's Frodo, remember, said, he might have fallen in battle anyway. There would have been an attack of orcs, however generous Thorin had been with his treasure.
That is true, said Gandalf. Poor Thorin. He was a great dwarf of a great house, whatever his faults. And though he fell at the end of the journey, it was largely due to him that the kingdom under the mountain was restored, as I desired. But Dian Ironfoot was a worthy successor. And now we hear that he fell fighting before Erebor again, even while we fought here. I should call it a heavy loss, if it was not a wonder rather that in his great age he could still wield his axe as mightily as they say he did, standing over the body of King Brand before the gate of Erebor until the darkness fell. It might all have gone very differently indeed. The main attack was diverted southwards, it is true, and yet, even so, with his far-stretched right hand, Sauron could have done terrible harm in the north while we defended Gondor, if King Brand and King Dian had not stood in his path. When you think of the great battle of Pelennor, do not forget the battle of Dale. Think of what might have been. Dragonfire and savage swords in Eriador. There might be no queen in Gondor. We might now only hope to return from the victory here to ruin and ash. But that has been averted, because I met Thorin Oakenshield one evening on the edge of spring not far from Bree. A chance meeting, as we say in Middle-earth.
If chance you call it.
Man, I love that. And I know we've covered a couple of those paragraphs before, but when you put it all together, it's such a great story to tell.
It is. It is. And in some ways, it's such a shame it didn't find itself into the main text because of it.
I know. It's so good. I love this sort of telling the story after the fact, giving us Gandalf's own insight into the why and his own thought processes. And we'll get to that, of course, as we discuss this. But yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Thorin, somewhat understandably, wonders if Gandalf is just nuts rather than filled with foresight.
Exactly. You want me to do what now? You're out of your mind.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember that even Gandalf thought his idea was a bit out there.
That's true.
So it's a bit hard to blame Thorin for thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Gandalf was laughing at himself, like, this is nuts, but there's this crazy idea. Thorin's like, yeah, it is a crazy idea. So, of course, Gandalf gets in the usual snark and then makes it clear once again, if Thorin flouts his advice, it will go poorly for him. I want to focus just briefly on Gandalf's sort of separate standalone counsel to Thorin: curb your pride and greed, given, of course, Thorin's eventual fate.
Right. I mean, he says, as you say, curb your pride and your greed, or you will fall at the end of whatever path you take, though your hands be full of gold. Oh, talk about foresight.
It is
This
painful.
is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Exactly what happens, because he didn't take Gandalf's advice here. He takes Gandalf's advice reluctantly to take Bilbo along, but he does not take his advice about himself. And I think that is, you're not going to take advice about curbing your pride when you're too prideful to take the advice.
To recognize that you need that advice. Yeah, that's the thing.
Right.
I mean, as hard as it is for him to say, okay, fine, I'll take Bilbo with me, it is sadly ironic that the arguably easier task of listening to Gandalf's advice about his pride proves to actually be the one he can't follow. And I know you said that he didn't, but part of me wonders, can he? Like, is he capable of it? And, that's where you come down to the whole choice and how much of it is choice and how much of it is sort of dwarven nature compounded by the dragon sickness that he ends up, experiencing.
Well, the dragon sickness, I think it amplifies his greed and his pride.
It wouldn't have taken a zero greed and turn it into a lot. I mean, it just wouldn't. Like the ring in that regard, right? It's sort of an amplifier. Yeah. It is hard. Yeah. It's hard to see because when he does eventually get it. And that's the thing. If he never gets it and he just dies a prideful, haughty guy, you're like, fine, he gets what he deserves. So be it. Right. Mess around, find out. But because he gets it at the very end, as he's dying, he's like, wow, I messed up. Your heart just like, oh, what a good king you could have been with this realization.
Yes. Yeah. Because he doesn't take Gandalf's advice, that's the root of his very, very poor behavior towards the people of Dale. And it's the reason why things go so badly wrong for him at the very end. He throws Bilbo out and he refuses to hand over even so much as a coin of gold to people who had helped him.
Who had killed the dragon, I might
Who had actually killed the dragon. I know. And he does indeed die, even though his hands are full of gold. I mean, metaphorically at the time, because he's trying to wield a sword and hold a shield. Right. But he has all of this gold, and yet really he has nothing. He has nothing.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how much you have if you're dead, in his case. Yeah.
Exactly. So Thorin, prideful, haughty Thorin, he's hit a bit hard by Gandalf's counsel. Yeah. But he responds, instead of responding from a place of, I'll think about that. He responds from a place of burning anger. Yeah. And he reminds Gandalf that he's going to use his own judgment in this, not Gandalf's. Thank you very much.
Like you said before, it is his pride that keeps him from accepting the advice about his pride. It's that
inevitable.
That self-defeating circle of pride. I even think of like Melkor at the very beginning, and of his shame came a secret anger, or you think of all these characters who they're called on the carpet and they have a chance to fix things. And here Gandalf is calling them on the carpet. Like, it's not, hey, avoid pride and greed. It's curb what you've already got. You already have these characteristics. You need to rein them in or they're going to be the end of you. And they are.
Yeah, it's that defensive response, isn't it?
Yeah, it's natural. Doesn't make it good. It's natural, especially when you are suffering from pride. And that's the hardest thing. Because if somebody wants to call you out for some other thing that you've done, you can hear that if you're not prideful. But if they're calling you out for pride, you've already got pride, and now it's hard to hear that. Yeah,
Ain't gonna happen.
No. So Gandalf finally, and really without much hope, tries a very different angle. And he's like, well, Thorin, you probably know I'm not a nice guy. I don't like a lot of people. In fact, I really don't care much about anybody, especially you. But I really like this Bilbo guy. Treat him right. I'll be your BFF. I mean, that's huge. You will have a wizard here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I'm not sure Thorin really values that.
I know. But he recognizes something in it, doesn't he?
So again, we get one of these moments where Gandalf stops his story and explains it to Frodo and the others, the why or the what he was thinking bits, which are so useful for us as well.
Isn't it? I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's not shooting blindly. He knew, as he points out here, that dwarves understand devotion to friends.
It's absolutely right. If you go back to the Silmarillion in the chapter of Aule and Yavanna, we learn there that dwarves are fast in friendship and in enmity. And folks, I don't think you need me to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Tolkien isn't using the word there to mean capable of moving at a high speed. It's not like, I just met you, now I'm your best friend, or I just met you, now I'm your worst enemy. This is the older meaning of fast, which means close and loyal. And if you recall, it was Gimli who said when the Fellowship were getting ready to leave Rivendell, faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens. Dwarves get it. Like when they are loyal, when they are your friend, they have a deep, deep commitment to that, and they're going to live up to that. And I think there's something here that Gandalf says that Thorin's like, that resonates. Like, I get that.
Right, yeah. The stubbornness of dwarves, after all, can be turned to something pretty
Exactly.
good.
Stubbornness is just steadfastness, maybe turned up a little too much.
Yeah, turned up to 11.
Yeah, as I actually think about when I think about my daughter.
I hope she's not listening behind the door at the moment to that.
Go right ahead, Ellie.
For a shock.
Go right ahead, Eleanor. I've said it to your face. She's beautifully stubborn, yeah.
A bit to Gandalf's surprise, Thorin actually buys it.
Yeah, I know.
Bilbo
What do you
can come
know?
with us, he says, if he's got the guts to do it.
That's right.
You knew there'd be a catch. Thorin tells Gandalf he needs to come and look after your darling. I do love that phrase. What the hell?
I can hear. I know it's like comes out of nowhere.
It does a little bit.
Look after your darling.
Yes,
I do love that tone, and because Thorin can give as good as he gets, right? I mean, that's the thing. He is not just rolling over, with Gandalf kind of steamrolling him. But this is a win-win. Like I said, at worst, you get a thief who gets himself killed along the way, but might be helpful. But you get that powerful wizard thrown in for free on a very dangerous journey. The only challenge is that Gandalf kind of overshot the mark a little on this because he needed to deal with the White Council, Saruman, and Dol Guldur, who's kind of like, oh, shoot. Okay, I'll go, but really I'll stay with you as long as I can. Yeah, that's a nice little out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, talk about having to multitask now.
Yeah.
So now we get the wrap up with Frodo and the rest as Gandalf concludes. And he starts by acknowledging something I don't think you ever really discussed in The Hobbit, that there was no hope.
I don't know that we did. I'm trying to remember. I was thinking about that because, we talked a lot about fate. We talked a lot about luck, primarily because the films are still fresh in our mind. And as much as we love the Jackson Lord of the Rings films, the Jackson Hobbit films really downplayed that and made it, totally got rid. They changed the meaning of that ending phrase about just a little fellow in the world after all. And Thorin saying things like we make our own luck. So I don't know that we focused on the primary theme of hope and despair like we would in other, obviously Lord of the Rings is filled with it. I don't think we talked about it in the context of the quest as a whole. I think we may have talked about it in moments like Bilbo not giving into despair when he was dealing with the spiders or when the dwarves were all in barrels, things like that. But I don't know that we talked about it at all when it came to the idea of the quest in general. But this is crazy. You're not going to be able to defeat a dragon with a handful of dwarves and a hobbit. Not going to happen.
But isn't this a very, very strange thing for Gandalf to say?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's supposed to kindle hope.
He's supposed to kindle hope. And he talks about hope a number of times in The Lord of the Rings.
A lot.
And we understand that the opposite of hope is not hopeless, but despair.
Exactly.
And hence we get what happens to Denethor, for example. And despair is only for those who know the end.
Beyond all doubt.
Beyond all doubt.
I think that was Gildor that had prompted that. And Gandalf's like, now, wait a minute. Despair. No, we're not going to despair. Yeah.
So, is Gandalf saying, when he says there was no hope, does he mean that Thorin didn't really have hope? Or does he really mean that he didn't have any hope? Because it depends on how you read that sentence.
That's interesting. It does. It really
But
does.
the idea that Gandalf sent them off, but he had no hope, it just contradicts everything that Gandalf talks about in The Lord of the Rings to do with hope.
It's almost like, okay, I don't think you're going to be successful. You're probably not going to be successful, but I know that Bilbo has to go with you. And for some reason, I've got this foresight that if he does, you will be successful.
So that's
right?
hope.
Because he does say that. That's hope.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just referring to the idea that there's no reason to believe that this could ever succeed on its own, that there's going to have to be outside influence. There's going to have to be, well, sort of that Estelle, the hope in some external source that will come in and save the day, for lack of a better phrase, that there's no hope in and of the quest itself. It's not only not likely to succeed, it's an impossibility for it to succeed without some sort of intervention.
But it's a really interesting, tiny, tiny little nugget there, isn't it?
It is weird to have Gandalf himself say that, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, at the end, he also touches on that advice he'd given to Thorin that we were talking about there a few minutes ago, saying that pride and greed overcame him anyway, leading to his death. And that's absolutely 100% true.
It is, but I kind of understand where Frodo's coming from. He asks, like, wait a minute. It wasn't like Thorin's pride and greed led to the orc attack. I mean, yes, if the orcs had not shown up and the dwarves ended up fighting both the men and the elves and Thorin died, which was very likely to happen if the orcs didn't show up, then you could say his pride and greed led to his death. But the orcs were going to come regardless. No matter if he had given gold to the men and the elves there at the door as they were negotiating at the gates, and then, shows up, the orcs just appear, I still think he dies. So here's the thing. Gandalf doesn't actually answer that question. He says, oh, poor Thorin.
Yeah, that's true. But there are many kinds of ways of reading the way in which pride and greed overcame him, leading to his death.
Yes, that is true.
And I think that it's because it defeated him himself, that he was not, on top of his game, if you like. He was not the best Thorin he could be in that moment.
That's a good way of putting it.
Pride and greed had overcome all of his better, stronger qualities, leaving him a bit of a shell of himself. And you can't face this huge battle when you're already battling inside yourself, because part of you is just withering and dying because of what's happened. And, the fact that you've got, we were talking about this word amplified, you've got the gold sickness, the dragon sickness, amplifying the greed and the pride that was already there. I think what you have in the Battle of the Five Armies is a Thorin that is not the best Thorin he could have been.
In a way, and this is a weird connection, but stick with me on this. Hear me out, as they say. Boromir had pride lead to his downfall, but it was an earlier downfall. So what we see is the trajectory of Thorin, or of Boromir, falling to the pride and greed, trying to take the ring, but then coming back and being the best of Boromir. And that's what enabled him to, even though he died, to be himself when he did, to do the good thing and to face and to die a good death. And Thorin doesn't have that moment until after he's mortally wounded.
Right.
It's only as he lay dying that he repents of that and changes. And that's heartbreaking, because with Boromir, it means his death is a victory. And with Thorin, it isn't.
It isn't.
It's an unnecessary thing.
It is. Repentance is important.
Huge.
right? Yeah. That is a very, very important moment, the moment he has between him and Bilbo.
Oh, critical. I love it.
It really is a significant moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he could not possibly claim that there is any kind of victory in his death the way that there is for Boromir. Because, like I said, the greed and the pride amplified by the dragon sickness, the gold sickness, that's overcome him. He does not overcome it again. With Boromir, who also has all of that pride, and a greed that is a different greed. It's not a greed for gold and things like that. It's a greed for self-aggrandizement almost.
For power, but specifically his power to defend the people.
His power, yes. Yeah. Him leading this grand army and all that kind of thing. It's a different kind of greed, but it is greed. It's there. But he overcomes that. And so, as you say, when he dies, it is a victory over the power that has tried to overcome him. That is significant. It is a huge thing that when he dies well.
Yes. And he dies demonstrating that repentance.
Yeah, and nobody at the end just says, "Oh, poor Boromir." They sing him away in his boat, whereas Gandalf, all he gets is poor Thorin.
Yeah, poor Thorin.
That is a huge difference, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And it only just now came to mind. I know I've compared Boromir to other people a lot. I famously wrote the comparison with Boromir and Saruman, again, moments of repentance, because that's such a theme in Tolkien. I don't know that this one crossed my mind, but yeah, it's really very similar temptations, very similar falls, but very different moments of restoration in relation to death. And with Thorin, it really is a tragedy. It's sad.
Yeah, I would actually suggest that Saruman's death is worse even than Thorin's.
100%.
Because Thorin is mortally wounded and he repents.
Yes. At least he does that.
Saruman does not. I mean, when that sort of shade comes out of his body and it looks wistfully towards the west, that's it. You're already dead. There's been no repentance at all. And he's gone.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing left of Saruman.
No.
He's literally obliterated from this earth.
Annihilation.
Whereas Thorin repents and he gets laid in state and treated like the dead king that he is. So there is some honor
buried
left
with the Arkenstone and with his with the sword and everything. I mean,
exactly. But Boromir rightly gets a greater honor than both.
Yes, he does. Rightly so. That was a fun little sidebar. I really enjoyed that. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. So while Gandalf acknowledges that, sure, Thorin could have died anyway, he, as you said, just doesn't really address the pride death thing, and he just moves on. I'm not talking about that. He moves on, and he does praise Thorin a little bit. Just a little bit. He says he was a great dwarf from a great house. He did accomplish the thing that I wanted, the restoration of the kingdom under the mountain.
Yeah, it's pretty much because
so, he says all of that, but then, of course, he tempers it with, no matter what his faults.
Right, no matter his faults. And pride and greed led to his downfall. So that's when he shifts gears to Dine Ironfoot. Now, we've talked at length about him already. He was the hero of the Battle of Azanul-Bazar. But it's at this moment, as Gandalf is telling the story post-coronation of Aragorn, or around the time of the coronation, that word has reached him of Dine's death defending Erebor, which would have been a few months ago now, along with the death of King Brand as well. And it must have been a hard thing for Gandalf to hear that news.
I would say so. That would hit him, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And he ends with the speculation about what might have happened. We've talked through this before, but it's definitely worth the reminder, isn't it?
It is.
Without the defense in the north of Dale and Erebor under Kings Brand and Dine, Sauron could have done huge damage up there.
Huge damage. I mean, Eriador, the whole region could have been swept up by Sauron's forces. Those forces might have included the dragon had he not been defeated at the Quest of Erebor, thanks to Bilbo's involvement. And had that been the case, let's be honest, Rivendell itself could have been defeated. That's what he means by we might not have a Queen of Gondor. Arwen might be dead.
Yes.
Or at the very least, fled.
Right.
Like with
her only choice to quickly run to the Great Havens and get on a boat. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as bad as the Shire was when the Hobbits returned, at least it's still there.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. It could have been utterly destroyed without this, as Gandalf calls it, chance meeting.
Oh man, so much on chance. It might all have gone very differently indeed. When you think of the great battle of Pelennor, do not forget the mailbag of Bree.
Groan.
Think of what might have been. Oh, we're not done yet, Sara. Trust me. There's a long one. Junk mail and magazines in Eriador. There might be no Amazon deliveries in Gondor. We might now only hope to return from the victory here to empty mailboxes. But that has been averted. Because I met Barlow and Butterbur one evening on the edge of spring behind the bar at the Prancing Pony. A chance meeting, as we say in Middle-earth. Sara, once you've wiped the cringe off your face, what does Barlowman have for us tonight?
I'm not sure there is anything strong enough to wipe the cringe from my face at this moment. Folks, what you can't see is me gently bouncing my forehead off my desk. Okay, well, instead of doing that, because, bruise is going to bruise, let's give you this question, which comes from Anna in Halifax.
Okay.
And she asks, in the Quest of Erebor, Gandalf reveals his strategic motivations for involving Bilbo in the dwarves' quest. But to what extent does this perspective change our understanding of Gandalf as a character? Is he primarily a wise mentor or a calculating chess master moving pieces across Middle-earth? And how does this revelation affect our reading of the seemingly chance encounters throughout Tolkien's mythology?
Is he a mentor or is he a chess master? Yes.
Oh, do not ask the elves a question, for they will answer both yes and no.
Yeah. He's definitely both. In fact, I think we see a little bit of that in one of the quotes that we pulled from Peoples of Middle-earth when he acknowledged, you could say, I have been chosen and I've been chosen to choose him. So he is both a manipulator, if you will, a chess player, no doubt moving pieces around, but he himself is being moved around. He himself is being used to accomplish this great task.
Yes.
That said, and his awareness of the grand scheme of things in the big picture, which we talked about at length earlier, does not contradict the fact that he also cares deeply about Bilbo and is a mentor and does want to try to help the hobbits grow. We'll learn more about this next week, but he really does have this sort of desire to educate the hobbits. Like they become too parochial for their own good, and he wants to educate them. And I think we'll read this next week, something about how you cannot educate an entire people all at once. So he picked Bilbo. And, that's genuine. That comes from a place of love and admiration for the hobbits and for the Shire, while at the same time, he certainly wouldn't endanger the big picture to save the Shire.
Right.
He doesn't come back with the hobbits when Saruman is there.
No,
so
you can deal with that.
Yeah, I've got other things to do. And in his case, it's frankly just take a break and talk to Tom. But, you guys are powerful enough to do that now, which is because he's mentored them and brought them along and done these things. So it really is both. I just find it interesting that we see glimpses here of Gandalf himself being used, that he has been chosen to make this choice, which is not something we often get a glimpse of. Yeah.
No. Exactly. Now, I think you're right, because I think both things can be true at once. I think the wise mentor is who Gandalf is, whereas the calculating chess master is what his task is.
Yeah, it's his job. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
And one does not preclude the other. I think that somebody like Gandalf, who, as you mentioned, is a steward of the whole of Middle-earth, somebody who has that very wide perspective of what is going on, somebody who feels like his duty is to the whole of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
That person naturally has to be thinking about, okay, I need this to happen. These people have to go over there. That thing has to work for that thing to work. Of course he does. But that does not, because he is not the CEO of some nasty great bank. He is perfectly capable of caring about the people with whom he's working and the people for whom he's working at the same time as doing what he must do.
That makes me think of Rohan and Theoden, because he knows he has to put Rohan in a position to not only defeat Saruman, but then support Gondor. Without Rohan, Gondor will fall, and he knows that. So he puts things in motion to get Rohan there, but you can see in the way he works with Theoden, it's also from a place of care. Like
Yes.
he cares that Theoden has lost what he had. He's lost his greatness. And he wants him to regain this, not just because it means he'll have a powerful ally coming from Rohan, but because it's what's best for Theoden. Like he knows that Theoden might live 5 more years under Saruman's and Wormtongue's thumbs and die of old age. Or he could die on the battlefield a hero. And what would Theoden want? Right?
Oh,
Gandalf
yes.
knows. So yeah, he definitely, it is both. And that doesn't surprise me because Tolkien himself is a man of dichotomy, right? We see all the time this, these on fairy story moments of eucatastrophe and the happy ending simultaneous with the Beowulfian moments of the circle of light and the inevitable defeat. And, that's what he is, a man of antitheses, as I think Dr. Verlin Flieger put it. And that's what we've got here. This sort of idea that these things conflict, but they don't. And Gandalf's a
not really.
big enough man to hold them both in his head at once, and for them both to be true. Yeah.
Yeah. Completely agree with you. But that was a good question.
It really was. Folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony podcast. But please be sure to come back next week as we learn that Gandalf is inspired by Thorin's own haughty disregard of the hobbits. It's going to be fun stuff.
That is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that. And Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP, editor Jordan Rannells, Barliman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
And please take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. That's where you're going to find show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, including the Boromir Saruman one I mentioned, and our online storefront where you can get PPP merch featuring all the great episode artwork that Megan's been doing for the show since the start of season 7, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And they're well worth finding
They really
because
are.
they're absolutely gorgeous. But you'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony podcast is, after all, a podcast about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. And we do get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, so we thank you for that.
Indeed, we do. We also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Zaksu in Illinois, Sarah in New Jersey, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, Keith in Alabama, Erica in Texas, and Vivian in California.
There's also James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, Olivia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, Kevin in Massachusetts, Julie in Washington, Bruce in California, Joe in Maryland, Nathan in Arizona, and Kevin in Pennsylvania. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed, thank you. I could not do this without you all.
Now make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
One last thing as always, though, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, whether you think it is foresight that's on us, or maybe we're just merely crazed, to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
Now, I'm not going to tell you which one of those I think it is. But if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us. But please be sure to still email the question to Barliman, though.
That's right. Now, even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable lately, there is still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able. As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
However, farewell, folks.